I feel absolutely ancient saying this, but the 9th generation of Pokémon is coming in just a month, and with it, a form-altering regional gimmick is here. The Terastal Phenomenon gives us Pokémon that can crystallize with energy from the ground, completely changing their type. You got a Sudowoodo that's actually, Woodo. But I can't help but shake the feeling that we've seen this before. Like, at least a couple times. Maybe a lot of times. Why does this keep happening? Let's talk about it. If you enjoyed this video, or have liked any of the other ridiculous content I've made over the last 13 years, please consider leaving a tip at bit.ly/witstips. I just came back to full-time content creation, and I really feel like we've been putting out some banger videos. Every bit of support will help me make better videos even faster, support my family, and continue to put nonsense out into the world. If everyone watching was able to chip in $2 here, I would never have to make one of these again. Thanks for considering, and enjoy the show. So terastalized, whatever you want to call it, the blinged out Pokemon with mixed up typing are here. But if you look at the history of Pokemon across all of its media forms, which you know I love to do, I'd argue we've seen this before all over the place. In Paldea, energy seeps from the ground itself and can be absorbed through crystals that creep above the ground as well. This power can be absorbed by a special device called a Terra Orb, which can release the energy and alter both the form and typing of the Pokemon it's directed at. So I started remembering, and eventually actively seeking examples of magic crystals that can change a Pokemon's type. I also noticed that this transformation often, but not always, utilizes human technology to harness the energy in some way. Right off the bat, I do want to make it clear that, yes, I get it, different Pokemon media have different canons, but I'm gonna lump everything together in a one big messy video, because why not? It's fun! And what better way to start this show than with the show? All the way back in 1999, the Pokemon anime gave us the Crystal Onyx. Looking back, the Orange Islands arc was kinda crazy, giving us all kinds of experimental Pokemon adventures pretty early into the franchise's lifespan. One of those experiments is the Crystal Onyx. Not only does it have a crystallized form like the Terastal Phenomenon, but its type composition is also considered to be entirely different than a normal Onyx as well. This particular one isn't going down to a sprinkler system. In fact, it's immune to water and even lives in the water. It's only when our filler character uses the opposite type that you'd expect for an Onyx, fire, that they're finally able to defeat this special form. This episode aired a good half year before Gold and Silver dropped, and even Steelix is still weak to water. These Crystalmon are just built different. And speaking of old crystal Pokemon, the TCG is filled to the brim with them, starting with the literally named Crystal Pokemon in 2002 with the Japanese set The Wind from the Sea, and eventually the English set Aquapolis. Crystal Pokemon are already an unusual typing due to all of them being colorless, but these Radiant Rares also come with the same passive ability, which allows them to change their type into 3 additional bonus ones depending on which basic energy you attach to them that turn. Besides the fact that these are actual crystal Pokemon, these ones make me think of Terastal Pokemon in the way that the same individual Mon can morph into multiple different types. The other Terastal TCG twin is a subject that I've wanted to talk about since the dawn of this channel: the Hoenn region and Delta Pokemon. This era was released in 2005 and 2006 with 4 TCG sets, from the English Delta species up to Dragon Frontiers. It features the Delta Pokemon, named after the Greek Delta letter, which designates change, and they've all been given an entirely new type, and sometimes even 2. Hoenn leans heavily into the human technology aspect of type alteration. The city of Hoenn is part of a new region also called Hoenn, and hosts a massive tower. This tower harnesses that area's unique magnetic signature to fire out electromagnetic waves, all in pursuit of tracking the legendary Pokemon Mew. According to the Hoenn researchers, this electromagnetic radiation is what caused mutation in the local species of Pokemon to diverge in typing. The project's researchers can even be found with experimental, man-made Pokémon. Hoenn's Pokémon, such as Voltorb and Magnemite, can function both as organic beings, or can be converted into pure energy.
Has science gone too far?
However, there's also an argument that the distinctive deltas aren't even a creation of mankind at all. Each set brings us to an island farther and farther away from the influence of the Holan range, to the point where the only human beings we encounter are no longer scientists and researchers, but castaways and hermits. And even beyond the electromagnetic influence of the tower, we still see additional natural Delta species Pokémon in the wild. The third set in particular, Crystal Guardians, was probably the biggest reason that Terastal Pokémon gave me such deja vu. EX Crystal Guardians takes you to new distant shores, where more new Pokémon live among astonishing crystals that can change how trainers do battle. Crystals that change how you do battle. Well, I'll be damned! That sounds exactly the same! You can find these crystals scattered all across this set's art, and they especially seem to have a symbiotic relationship with the Delta species. The resemblance to the Paldea crystals with Terastal energy is uncanny, and despite originating over 15 years ago, the newest Delta species card actually comes from 2021. Just last year, the Celebration set gave us a lot of blast from the past promo cards, and that included this wonderful water-type Delta Mimikyu, complete with those big ol' crystals. Now, these three big examples are what I feel like best show how the past can so closely resemble the modern Terastal phenomenon. But what if we broaden the definition? Like, instead of specifically crystals, what if we just generically looked at any energized Earth? Anything like stones, gems, rocks.
You have a rock collection? It's a mineral collection.
Now, maybe I'm getting a little too broad, maybe I'm cheating a little bit, but it's fine, okay? Sue me. Similar to Crystal Onyx, you also have a Sudowoodo from the anime that has harnessed the power of gold through human science experiments and became resistant to water. Or what about the Ice-type living Snorlax that was created using the power of Aurora energy or Christmas magic or something? Or in the Rebirth manga, the characters changed their type. Well, they literally merged their body with Pokémon, but that's with the crystal, the Burst Heart. And it's a bigger stretch, but the Farum region in Pokken Tournament also uses stones to merge human with Pokémon, the Synergy Stones. And speaking of stones, what about straight up Mega Evolution? Those use an energized Earth, the Mega Stone, combined with human technology to make lots of Mega Evolutions that can change a Pokémon's type. Or how about the original energized Pokémon Stone, the Evolution Stone? These bad boys are needed to activate one of the first type-shifting Pokémon, yeah boy, aka Eevee.
Yeah, boy.
The number of references to these stones and Eevee are enough to fill its own video. I mean, heck, there's an entire laboratory built just to study Eevee and its forms. One of the more interesting case studies is V, the main Eevee from the first Pokémon Adventure series. This Eevee has been experimented on by Team Rocket and utilizes a microchip device that allows Eevee to freely evolve and devolve between its forms. This series also featured special rare evolution stones deep below the ground in Vermilion Harbor that can be used indefinitely. Eevee is just a curious phenomenon in Pokémon. Its Pokédex entries regularly mention that its genetic makeup is irregular or unstable, and its multiple evolutions are activated by the radiation energy of evolution stones. You can argue that this has been a part of Pokémon since the very beginning. Special rocks with special energy that can make special types. So we know that this keeps happening, but I wanted to try and dig a little deeper into the magical Earth to try and find some kind of additional insight. Why does this keep happening? Is it because the Pokémon designers are lazy and it's just easy to keep introducing the same mechanics? I mean, sure, maybe. But that isn't a very fun answer, so we're gonna start trying to answer the question from this angle. Why does this phenomenon keep happening in the Pokémon world? Well, how was the Pokémon world created? Arceus is seen by many in the Pokémon world as that world's very creator, often going by just the original one. Like many real-life creationist stories, Arceus is born from nothing, materializes the world, and often exercises judgment over the state of the entire universe, even between dimensions. Arceus also, of course, fits our formula. Freely shifting between all the types, Arceus has its own special energized Earth that it can cycle through, the plates. And yeah, it even works with crystals! The Z crystals from Gen 7 can also change its type. According to the engravings that appear on the plates themselves in both Generation 4 and Legends Arceus, the original one breathed alone before the universe came. When the universe was created, its shards became this plate. When we look at the location of the plates themselves, they're usually embedded deep in the earth, either underwater, in ruins, or underground. I don't think it's too far-fetched to assume that with the creation of the universe, Arceus unleashed its energy in the form of all of the types, broken up across the earth itself, which would explain why the power to change types is also embedded in stones, crystals, or even just the mysterious radiating energy of the earth itself. So yeah, the creator did it. It's kind of a cop-out way to tie everything together, but hey, they're the original type changer, so it kinda works. But even this got me thinking about another type of creator. On an even more meta level, the actual creators of Pokémon. In our world. Where did the idea of the evolutionary stones come from? I mean, superpowered stones are one of the oldest pieces of human history. But still, I continue to dig, just in case I found something fun and shiny. Original series creator Satoshi Tajiri is very private and has not been heavily involved in his own franchise for a long time, but he's spoken plenty about all of the many reasons why the Pokémon universe came to be. I had heard that he was heavily inspired by bug collecting as a child, but I never knew that Pokémon had so much inspiration from existing media. Besides just being a product of the manga and anime boom, Tajiri specifically cites the franchises of Godzilla and Ultraman as inspiration for the Pokémon world. Godzilla brought the dawn of the kaiju film era, and obviously could have influenced the monster battling mechanic, and Tajiri directly references the capsule kaiju from Ultra 7 as an additional inspiration. I tried really hard to dig between the lines. Like, Godzilla's powers were possibly created by the radiation of a nuclear world, which could maybe be a partial inspiration for the radiation energy of the stones? And Ultraman had its share of gems and stones that enable its transformations, like this one in Ultraman Leo. But once again, this isn't super clear-cut. The only real precious connection to special rocks that I could find was a reference from Tajiri about how he would use big stones to lure out rare nocturnal bugs and collect them on the underside. Also, he started Game Freak as a video game magazine, giving tips and tricks of all the most popular games at the time, so you could argue he was inspired by any popular Japanese game that came before Pokémon. In a more modern interview with Shigeru Omori and longtime Pokémon dev Junichi Masuda, the duo answered a question about evolution, sort of implying that Pokémon evolution is not an exact science and that the rules are never really set in stone. So maybe the lore of the stones is also not set in stone. So, with my real-life search spiraling out of control and falling away from my subject on Pokémon that changed types, I decided to refocus one last time. Why do Pokémon even have types to begin with? Here are 2 interview snippets with the original character designer Ken Sugimori with the answer. It first started with designs of dinosaurs and monsters in a super deformed style. They had fangs and long nails and spikes jutting out all over their bodies. It started with Pokémon like Rhydon and Nidoking, for example. And when we looked at them all together, the designs felt rather uniform. As the game's development progressed, we added the idea of types to the game system. The idea came to us during development. Battles would get monotonous if there were only strong and weak Pokémon, so by affixing types to the Pokémon, we were able to give the fighting more depth. So it turns out, after all this time, there might not be a big, smart, significant answer for why the Pokémon have elemental types. They just did it because they thought it would be more fun!